Hello, guys, and welcome to a new episode of Crooked Illness. Today's episode, we will be jumping into language as it relates to your relationships, passions, interests, and many other areas of your life. Joining me in this powerful conversation today is my guest, Mark England. Mark is a TEDx speaker, professional speaking coach, and co-founder of Procabulary and Enlifted. Procabulary provides cutting-edge online training programs and world-class coaching, training in the art of communication for individuals, organizations, and businesses. Enlifted is similar to Procabulary with an emphasis on the fitness industry and providing a coaching certification to those looking to expand their skill set, grow their services, and increase their impact on client lives. We will be hearing a lot about Mark's story and his background today. So without further ado, welcome Mark to the podcast.
Thank you, Paris. Great intro.
Thank you. Great to have you on today, and I'm super excited to get into this conversation. So let's just jump right into it. So if you could, first tell me a little bit about your story and background as it relates to your passion for language.
My passion for language was birthed out of dark times and absolute need. Once upon a time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was an aspiring mixed martial artist and kickboxer. I was doing well on the amateur scene here in the middle of the East Coast of Virginia, and got the opportunity to go over to Thailand. Mm-hmm. The plan was, Paris, go over there for a year, polish up the skills, come back, go pro. That was the plan. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen. Not even close. Went over there. Oh yeah. Went over there and had my second knee surgery 6 months in.
Wow.
The whole thing stopped. Oh yeah. It was a massive wow on my head, and darkness descended. So yeah, my fighting career, my dreams, my passion, that was the first thing that it didn't hold my attention. I'm talking about hard style martial arts. It commanded my attention. I was a wrestler in high school, and okay, fine, pinning someone, yay. Mm-hmm. Choking someone. That was I remember the first time I got choked in a jiu-jitsu class, and I was immediately hooked. So anyway, I found something that I loved and helped me deal with my internal fear that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me, and that I was somehow doomed to fail from the start. I had an entrenched victim mentality growing up, like, this is very common, turns out. And then I found something that helped build me up and give me an identity, which was, it was better than what I was dealing with. It was a Band-Aid though. And that was a surprise, because I thought that I had, slayed my demons by getting in the ring and proving that I wasn't scared, when I really was, and
yeah,
all that fun stuff. So fast forward to Thailand, I move over there, jack my knee up again. I wouldn't just overtraining, and I didn't laugh for a year. You ever done that?
No.
I don't recommend it. I really don't. Yeah. So I didn't laugh for a year. I don't know, and I might not have even smiled.
Wow.
For a year, because I had such a horrible story raging in my head about myself. I was using this massive fail, because it was a big deal to move over there at the time. No one had done it from, the social scenes I was in, and everybody was excited for me. I was excited for me, and it was a flop. I mean, I just really shit the bed.
Yeah.
And so I decided to stay over there. I would rather stay over there and be a broken no one in this massive city, on literally the other side of the globe from Virginia, than go back home and not get to be that fighter.
Wow.
It was a weird
Wow.
decision. It was a very strange decision. So I stayed over there, and I lived in Thailand. Ended up living over there for a decade. I lived in Bangkok for 5 years, and then down on an island in the Gulf of Thailand for another 5. And I'm so glad I did. It was what I needed. It's not what I wanted. It's definitely what I needed. After a certain amount of time of being just a miserable bastard, it's true. A friend of mine told me about a detox resort down on the island of Koh Samui in the Gulf of Thailand. He went down and did a 3-day liver cleanse, came back looking good, feeling even better. And he said, dude, you could use some of that. And he was right. So I go down there and I do a 7-day cleanse. It was a great gig. You pay to not eat. And they have all these detox pills and shakes. And at the time, it was a very high volume, Paris. There was a lot of people coming through from all over the place doing these. The place had a buzz about it. And so I kept going back. My 3rd trip down, I went to an emotional detox workshop one evening.
Wow.
Yeah. Guy by the name, and me and all my glory and wisdom, I laughed at it when I heard about it. Emotional detox. And I went and I saw something that made sense to me. A guy by the name of Barry Musgrave, who turned into one of my mentors in this work. He walked a woman through, and it was a legit bad breakup. I'll give her that.
Yeah.
Walked her through the story of this bad, embarrassing, painful breakup. First time through, she was angry with tears. Second time through, he changed a little bit of the language. Now she's sad, no tears. Third time through, changed the ending and did a legit reframe of the main crux of the issue. And now she was essentially neutral. So much so that she goes, I was never going to work out with that guy anyway. He was actually pretty weird. So it was a transformation in 10 minutes, and it made sense how he did it. And I said, that's not my story, but that's my story. And that was in 2003. And I've been neck deep in the language and story game since.
Wow. So for you, I'd really love to hear. So when you were in that place that you described, like the really bad place, the mindset, when you were in that place, what did you do for yourself personally to shift from that using language to the place you are now, where you're helping other people with that? What did you do to kind of get out of that zone?
I started writing down my stories. That is the easiest thing to do. If someone you got look at the words. I have something on my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm under a lot of pressure. I've got to get this thing off my chest. We have language in our language to describe our experience of heavy stories. Mm-hmm. And, most people don't write anything down, Paris. Whether it's only 3% of the population has any written goals. Okay, half of a sentence on a cocktail napkin gets you in the 3% club, and I'm pretty damn sure it's even less for stories that haunt us, that bother us. Okay, I don't know about you. I'll speak for myself. There were a number of times in school when I handed in a rough draft. Did you ever hand in a rough draft?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hand in a rough draft. You ever hand in a third draft?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Better. You got a better grade than the rough draft, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most people don't even have a draft to hand in. Stories are hard ass work when we keep them in our head. When they're swirling around, they're seemingly infinite. The worst part shows up. We get the flash of that thing, and it's, oh, we tense all up, and then it disappears. Oh, what do I do with that? It's extremely difficult to curate the stories that you tell yourself about yourself if they are left to their own devices. It's like a ping pong, a pinball game in your head. You write those stories down.
Yeah.
First things first, write them down, and here, this is important, folks. Write them out conversationally. Don't write a little bit about the thing. Write it out like it's a chapter in your story, because it is, or a part of your story. And I recommend titling the specific memory.
Yeah.
And then writing it out
Write it
conversationally.
down.
It's huge. Now it's literally gone from inside your head and in your face, and now it's externalized. So the distance from your nose to the paper or the computer, maybe it's 2 feet.
Yeah. That kind
And
of brings me back to one of the points that we made in the previous conversation we had. You talked to me about the ways in which the majority of people use their language to train wreck their imagination. So how do people do that? Because I love the way that you said that. And when you brought that up to me, because I agree with you, and I'd love to hear what you think about that and the ways that you think that people do that.
why we do it? Part of the reason why we do it is very few people have any education about how their language influences them for better and for worse. And as far as the English language is concerned, I'm not an epistemologist. I don't study the history of languages or anything like that. I mean, there's the English language has been scripted and has been evolving for hundreds and hundreds of years. And where are we today? There's a subset of the English language, Paris. It's called conflict language in the Procabulary system. And it's a subset of the English language that people use accidentally to force themselves to stare at worst case scenarios, play the blame game, create impressive amounts of indecision, talk themselves out of opportunity, and construct an incompetent and impotent image of themselves in their imagination, on top of some other unpleasant things as well, as far as trapping their breath, wrecking their breath mechanics. Our language influences our breathing 100%, for better and for worse. I didn't learn about that in high school. Thanks. Yeah, so I can keep going.
Yeah, so that conflict language, because I know I'm actually doing your Procabulary thing. I'm on day 10, and
Oh, nice.
I learned about, so conflict language and architect language. So I know that, when you mention the conflict language that people use, that kind of becomes accidental, and they don't realize or recognize they're using it, or they're doing it just because it's become so, common, like just breathing or getting up in the morning. It's just what we do, and it's kind of how we are. And I like that the way you presented that in the program is that, first of all, you need to be aware of it and understand and recognize that, we do this, and we do use certain language that, keeps us feeling stuck and feeling like we're not enough, we're not good enough. And we continue to kind of do that. And I like how you made that transition from conflict language over to architect language. So what is that about? What is the architect language about, and how is it different from the conflict language?
Okay, great questions. And that's awesome. If you're on day 10, if someone gets halfway through the course, they're going to finish. And just like most things, finishing is good. On an interesting side note, what the percentage is for people that finish a marathon?
What?
That start a marathon? 50%.
Wow.
50% of the people that start a marathon finish a marathon. You know what percentage of people finish a marathon that don't start a marathon?
What?
None. No one that doesn't start a marathon finishes a marathon. So it's not, folks, it's not a race to the finish line. It's a race to the starting line. Be the person
Wow.
that starts things. Okay, and keep starting them, and you'll finish some of them, and you're way ahead of people that don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into the pillars of conflict and architect language. Conflict language, it turns people in. Let me back into that point. So the course that you're taking right now, core language upgrade, we had to reshoot that thing, Paris. And we did it right after we finished the first one. In 2015, early 2015, we shot it. My business partner and I looked at each other and said, shit, we got to shoot this again. Because before conflict language was called conflict language, it was called victim mentality language, which is accurate based if we go by the current definition of the victim mentality. The current definition of the victim mentality, it is, and I'm going to take a little bit out of the middle, and this is verbatim. The current definition of the victim mentality, it is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. That second sentence is bullseye. It depends, as in it's dependent, has to have a habitual thought process. Habitual accurately implies duration and addiction.
Wow.
And so the victim mentality, what does that do? It sidelines us. It turns us into spectators of our own life, which is not a fun place to reside in the story of us. It turns us passive, and people that causes all kinds of problems. So, we have this subset called conflict language. There are 3 pillars to it. Okay. There's negations. Do you know anyone by chance who's an Olympic gold medal warrior? WORRY. They worry. I mean, they're like world class at worrying.
Yeah.
My grandmother, she was a 3-time gold medal Olympic warrior. Oh, I worry about you so much. And it turns out that there's a style of language that is it goes hand in hand. It forces people to worry. It forces people to focus on what they don't want. Okay. I don't want to have so many arguments with you, Paris. What kind of picture did I just make in my mind?
Yeah.
Us arguing.
Yeah.
I can't spend all my money this month. What picture did I just make? Spending all my money. I'm not going to let them treat me this way. What did I just make a picture of? You see where this goes. So negation keywords, can'ts, won'ts, isn'ts, haven'ts, nots, shouldn'ts. They all put it's problem-centric language. That's one pillar. And we got the blame game. We got projections. She never lets me think for myself. He disrespected me. My mother treats me like I'm a child. So those 3 sentences right there, there's a myself and somebody else in those sentences. And just like 2 + 2 = 4, they're forcing me to create a victim and a villain in my imagination. I'm the victim. You were in the first one. You're the villain. Then I had him in the villain. And then my mom's in the villain. And I have to wait for someone else to change their behavior for me to feel better about myself, about my life. It's called jail. And so that's the second pillar. And then there's soft talk. I think it's almost like I'm procrastinating. I guess I'm probably drinking too much coffee. Perhaps I need to clean up my diet. So these soft talk keywords, it create all the indecision and second guessing, thinks, maybes, sort ofs, kind ofs, likes, perhapses, tries, hopes, one days. They force the indecision. So we got the worst case scenario, fun. We got the blame game, even more fun, and then all the indecision anyone else would ever want. That right there, so those are the 3 pillars of conflict language. That's about 85% of people suffering, roughly. And then there's the opposite of that. There's architect language. Architect language is when someone uses their words to help them stay focused on what's important to them. Okay? I want to have good conversations with you, which is very different than I don't want to argue with you so much. Okay? Or I'm going to save 20% of my income for the next 6 months, which is very different than I can't spend all my money this month. Or
Wow.
I'm not going to let them treat me that way. I'm going to spend time with people who respect me more. So look at what, and if when we slow down, this is folks, this is not rocket science. There's nothing rocket science about this. Okay, I am a simple man of mediocre intelligence. If I can put these dots together, anybody can do it.
Wow.
The issue is these conversations are very rarely had in a methodical, slow way to where we can do what you just did. Oh, wow. Put the dots together. Yeah, that sentence did just create that picture in my head. Huh.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Wow. I love how you brought that up because this is something that, like you mentioned before, that is not taught in schools. We don't learn this. We don't really have, at least for me, speaking from my experience, I've never had a conversation with someone about, hey, how do you think your language affects, how you feel, or how do you, like the conversation about language and how you speak and how you think and how you perceive things and how you translate that into words to put your feelings out there to another person, and maybe sitting there and thinking, hey, maybe when I'm saying, like the example you did, I don't want to argue with you, and you're painting that picture of arguing with that person, you're putting it out there. And I feel like just kind of taking the steps to reframe the way that you do that, and to get because you're trying to get your message across with both examples, right? You don't want to argue. I don't want to argue with you, and I'd like to have great conversation with you. Your point is, whether it's avoiding the argument, having a great conversation, it's kind of the same goal, but your language is painting drastically different picture to that other person. And it's also sending, confusing signals. And I like that you put this together to have a thing for people out there to learn about this and to really understand the ways that our language influences, because it really is everything. When you boil it down, communication, understand, like the words that I'm saying to you and the words that you're saying to me, like understanding what we're both talking about, what, like all of it boils down to everything in our lives. And if, people had more conversations about this, things would be, a lot better, like you say, and like you mentioned. So, I think that's huge. And this is something that's so necessary, and such a necessary thing to get into and to talk about and to have conversations about. Because another thing that you mentioned to me before last time we talked, you mentioned to me the 4 primary areas that you focus on related to the work you do with language. And those areas are imagination, emotions, posture, and breathing. How did you come up with these focus areas?
That's a good question. I'm I'm really bad at focusing on things that I find boring.
Yeah.
I suffered in school, Paris. It was horrible. I'm also really good at focusing on things that interest me. And I'm even better at focusing on things that I find fascinating. And from the very first time I saw it, story work, the language game, captured and has retained for 17 years my focus, my attention, my interest, my appreciation, my curiosity. So I have spent thousands of hours tracking paying very close attention between or to what people say and how they react to what they say. Sometimes that involves questions. A person says a particular sentence, and I'll inquire, what mental imagery are you making? Okay. Or in the early days, and someone would say something, and you can tell they're holding their breath. If you pay attention to it, it's just right there. It's so obvious. Or someone's telling a story and they're having a series of emotions. Okay. Or you're having a conversation with them and they're, touching themselves, making adjustments, moving with and if you pay attention to the whole thing, our language, it orchestrates this rolling experience of ourself that flows between our mental imagery and our feelings and emotions and the way we breathe and the way our body moves. It's all interconnected. And the language, it's the ring from Lord of the Rings. It's the thing that binds them all, in my perspective, in my opinion, both personal and professional. And there's this really crazy word that no one's ever heard of. It's called abracadabra. And making a joke. I don't know how good of a joke that was. And so abracadabra, which in my opinion is the most well-recognized word on the planet. I have been around. I've done some globe trotting professionally and done a lot of seminars. And most of the time, most of those seminars, I will bring up abracadabra. And regardless of where I am, what culture I'm in, whether the people are native or non-native English speakers, everybody's heard of that word. And everybody thinks magic. There's more to it than that. Abracadabra, fun fact of the day, folks, is Aramaic, which is an ancient language. It was the language the original Old Testament was written in. It is still spoken in some areas of the Middle East, around in Persia. And abracadabra translates to with my word I create, or with my word I influence. Look that up. And the metaphysicians, the teachers of the day, they would triangulate abracadabra and wear it around their neck as an amulet to remind them of the power and the mechanism. There's a mechanistic process to storytelling, the power and the mechanism of our words. And the four main areas, so circling back to the question, the four main areas we focus on in our version of this work, story work, when we use language, that's when we do it consciously. When we do it consciously, we're using language. When we use our language unconsciously, that's our language using us. Most people do not have conversations. Most of the time, it's conversations having people. And when someone uses language, when I mean language, I'm talking internal dialogue, what I think, or external dialogue, what I say, what I write. Our language influences four main areas of our experience of ourselves. Once again, our imagination, our feelings and emotions, our physical body, posture, and our breath. And when someone is using a lot of conflict language, they're using negations, worst case scenarios. They're creating people to blame for stuff that they're more responsible for anyone else in their life, which comes down to the majority of drama in people's lives. Okay, the majority of drama in people's lives is of their own creation. And then a bunch of indecision. That what that does, amongst other things, that activates sympathetic nervous system response. That activates stress response. When someone goes into a stress response, their breathing gets trapped in their upper chest, known as shallow breathing, labored breathing, or coastal breathing. And if it's done enough, we get these microaggressions or constrictions for ourselves. I'm far more concerned about my microaggressions to myself or my macroaggressions than anything else someone's going to say to me. I think that's the worst thing I could possibly imagine, is train myself to be more and more reactive to other people's words, which is what a large part of the population is doing right now. You know, they're training themselves to be to be touchy, to
Yeah.
be, and not like the good kind of touchy, to be reactive. It's dangerous. We're playing with fire collectively with that. Another way of saying that is there are some schools of thought that are promoting the lowering of people's psychological and emotional immune systems. I want a high one. It's the exact same as someone, you know, they got a low immunity. They go outside, they catch every single cold, they're always sick.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to be robust. Yeah.
I love the point that you made, like right before you got into that, about the victim mentality, because I feel like when you're talking about the languages, conflict language, archetype language, that victim mentality type of language. So I want to talk about a little bit more about that. So you told me a little bit about your story when we talked last time, and how you were in a deep victim mindset at one point. So can you tell me about this time, and what did you do to pull yourself out of that?
That was mid 2002 to mid 2003. Arguably the worst year of my life. If we're using the amount of smiles and laughter as the metric, we'll go ahead and call it that. So far, that was the one. And you know, I saw where I was going, Paris. I mean, and it's you have to be a genius to think, well, if I keep doing relatively the same thing of what I'm doing now, what am I going to look like? What are things going to look like 20, 30 years from now? I saw a bitter, twisted old man, waste of talent, and I said, anything but that. I meant it. And so well, what does that mean? What does anything but that mean? Well, that means I'm going to have to change some things, make some adjustments, and or participate in my life different. And so when I went down to the fasting resort and I saw the story work, I was like, okay, this is something that I can do. This makes sense to me. This is something that I can participate. I can do something with these stories that every time I revisit them in my imagination, I sure as shit wasn't talking about them. I just sit there and ruminate them all day. I was a loser. We have a very simple definition of losers and winners. You know what the definition in our system
What?
of a loser is?
Tell
Somebody
me.
who celebrates losing. I'm just going to
Yeah.
rep. I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
rep my losses. I'm going to rep my losses in my imagination a lot and see how things turn out. Okay. And I'm going to talk about them a lot, and I'm going to practice them. Literally. Our definition of a winner is something different. Okay. Of course, yes. Explore the times when you've made mistakes. We all make mistakes. And glean the knowledge, go through the process of exploring why what happened, and focus on the meaning that you assign to it. Okay, because there is a difference, folks. There's a difference between what happened and your interpretation of what happened.
Yeah, I think
Those are two.
that rumination piece that you mentioned was huge, because I feel like, when you're thinking about, obviously, like the moments when you weren't happy, weren't doing well, like you felt like shit, you're going to think about that, but to sit there and ruminate and kind of, like you said, practice it and continue to talk about it and tell yourself about it every day over and over again, but you still sit there and expect, okay, what is my life going to look like in 10 years? Well, like, hello, like it's not going to be any different if you continue doing the things that you're doing. Cause I know there's a quote, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but I think it's when you're kind of crazy for expecting to, if you're doing the same things, to get different results. You're doing this. It's insanity. I think it's insanity to believe that you're going to get a different result from doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And I feel like that's a huge, huge thing that you bring up, that rumination piece, because I think that's is that kind of for you, like the shift that you made, when you mentioned in 2002 and 2003, when you were not doing well, the worst year of your life, like lowest moment, did you make that shift from ruminating to changing like you said, changing your story or how you write your story?
Good question. We love, most people, when I say we, I mean most people love, a lightning bolt comes down and things were one way a second ago and now they're another way, and we see the light, and change happens in an instant. Not for me. Okay. It was a process of going into my stories, getting, first things first, write the story down, regardless of how, and I know this can be hard, so I'm going to take out regardless. There are some stories that people experience, okay, that are horrendous, okay, real heavy, hard traumas. And I've seen people shake at the idea of getting some of these stories on paper. Now, most people's stories aren't that kind of heavy, and I've just seen too much, Paris. I've seen too many great things happen for people that write down the stories, and I'm talking for anywhere from procrastination issues to war crimes and torture. Get the thing out of your head and get it on paper, and that is a big step in the right direction, because now it's gone from seemingly finite, infinite, and vague and opaque, and now it's out, and it's got a start, it's got a beginning, it's got an ending, it's got borders, it's much more manageable. You can look at the words. That was arguably the starting point. Well, it's not arguably the starting point, it was the starting point. I mean, when I saw that story work session, that emotional detox session, I got up, went straight to the internet cafe and downloaded an 80-page manual on how to do this work on myself. And I started working on my stories, and it's there's no one thing that I can say turn the corner, except for my decision to stick with it. So somebody wants the most simplest formula in the world for success. I have it. You start and you keep going. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything you've gotten really good at, Paris, you started, correct? And you kept going, correct?
Yep.
and it's the people that start and stick with things that get somewhere. I never dreamed that we would have 100 certified coaches in our coaches community. Okay, when I decided in 2007 that I'm going all in on this, and I'm going to get a tremendous amount of experience, I just knew I needed to. One-on-one experience and experience presenting. And I maintained that decision. And there's nothing special about me. There's hundreds, thousands of great success stories of people that did some really epic shit just because they stayed in the game. Most people's language works against them. Most people's language, they use it accidentally to talk themselves out of opportunity. Do whatever you have to do, folks. Clean up your backstory, get it on paper. That's a great start. Okay. Learn more about the words. Learn more about the words that create drama and disconnection and
Wow.
self-doubt, and use less of them. And you learn about the words that create more connection and self-belief and help you breathe better. You want to talk about having a gas in the tank? I was on a podcast earlier today, and we were talking about emotional endurance. If you want, okay, so anyone can start something. Good. Most people don't start anything. You be the person that starts, and if you want to be the person that stays in the game for a long period of time, work on your breathing mechanics, because when you get your breath low and slow, then you're going to have emotional endurance for the high highs, the low lows, the zigs and zags. You stay in any game long enough, you're going to see all the weather. And you can train yourself to have, you know, a better way of seeing yourself and your place in the world. And because we're always doing that. You know, this used to be embarrassing for me to talk about. Not anymore. I obsessed so much over my injuries and my surgery that I would find people with scars on them, scars in their knees. Okay, and I'd go up and have conversations with them. I wanted to know about their injury. Oh, you have an injury too? Ooh, tell me about it. Tell me about the career you could have had. And this gets spooky, because we have something in our brain, in a hardware in our brain. It's called the reticular activating system. Anyone that is into any kind of personal or professional development, mysticism, whatever, you have to learn about this. You don't have to do anything, and you have to learn about this. Go to YouTube, put in reticular activating system. There's a great 5-minute videos. So have you ever gotten in a car, Paris, and drove that car around, and then you started seeing that car around more and more and more?
Oh yeah.
How weird is that, truth be told?
I know. Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
And everyone's had that experience because of something called the reticular activating system. Once our RAS, is what it's called for short, gets programmed, as in something is deemed important, it goes on a search and edit mission. So my car got stolen 2017. I was in Richmond. Call my dad. I was like, hey, I need the farm truck. I go out to the farm. I get one of my dad's prized possessions, his 1985 Ford F-150, 2 tones of brown. It's called Brown and Browner, and it's in mint condition. It sits out under the canopy. I drive it into Richmond, and within one day, I start seeing 1985-ish Ford F-150s all over the place, because now my reticular activating system is searching for them. And while it's searching for them, it's also editing out the anything that's not that. Blue vans, okay, red Oldsmobiles, and get a load of this, folks. So let's tie this whole thing together, and then you ask me whatever question else you want to after that. This goes further than 1985 Ford F-150s. Our language is influencing our reticular activating system, and depending on how you've programmed it, there's a damn good chance you're filtering out the things that part of you wants in your life.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. Story. Woman comes in for a coaching session. She sits down and goes straight into it. She said, I'm having some real problems in my marriage. My husband thinks I'm attractive, and I just won't believe him. And then she goes, I know where it's coming from. And I said, oh, do tell. She's 10 years old, walks into her grandmother's house for Christmas. As soon as she gets in the door, her aunt leans down and goes, my, you have a big nose, just like me. Thanks for that. Little girl runs into the bathroom. Take a wild guess, Paris. What do you think the first thing she looked at when she got into the bathroom was?
Oh, that nose, honey.
Oh, that nose. which was physically no bigger than it was 5 seconds ago, but now in her imagination, she's got a honker. And because she's got a honker, she's now ugly. And because she has identified herself as ugly, that part of her is going to dismiss any kind of compliment that is antithetical to the belief system. Let's call it for what it is, an opinion that that I'm ugly. So her husband's, "Oh, babe, you look so hot tonight." "Nope, not having it."
That is so true. That is so true. That experience, the whole thing, everything that we've talked about today is so true, so relatable, because we all have language. We all use language. And sometimes we all struggle with understanding our own language, understanding other people, and the whole gap of communication. So if you could offer one piece of advice right now for somebody out there who's listening, who's struggling with conflict language and they want to overcome that, what would you say to them?
Good question. Real good question. I have a macro answer. I have a micro answer. Macro answer: slow down your rate of speech by about 20%. Slow down your rate of speech to about 80% of your normal rate of speech. When someone's, so I'm a professional speaker and a professional speaking coach. This is usually the first thing that we talk about when it comes down to presentation skills. When someone slows down their rate of speech, their breathing is going to improve. Their breath is going to get a little bit deeper into their chest. And also, when someone breathes a little bit better, they have more mental real estate to pay attention to things, as in how their words are influencing them. What words, it gives you the space to feel your language. It also gives you, if you take it far enough, it gives you the space to practice inflecting on your words differently. So you will become a more textured speaker. You will become a more dynamic speaker. And you just be able to pay better attention to yourself. Okay? It's a big deal. There's some people, we've got names for all kinds of things in Procabulary. Machine gun mouth. You ever met somebody who just talks? Can I cuss on here? Can I drop F-bombs?
Yeah.
You ever met somebody that just talks so fucking fast? It's like they've got a machine gun.
That's me sometimes, I can say.
Yeah, okay. I haven't seen it. And I'm thinking about two people in particular that just graduated from our level 1 certs, and we called that out quick. Yeah, compared to them, you do not have machine gun mouth. And most people know someone who talks real fast. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to listen to someone like that. It's exhausting to be that person. What's the other side of that coin? Slow down a little bit and watch what happens. You'll like it. That's the macro answer. The micro answer is to remove 50% of your soft talk keywords. So like I said, there's 3 pillars to conflict language. The best place to start, the easiest place to start, is with the soft talk.
Those probably, maybes.
Yes. Take out the likes, take out the maybes, take out the shoulds, take out the probablys, the possiblies, the tries, the hopes, the one days. Do not be a 1-day person, be a 2-day person.
Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yes. Be a 2-day person, guys.
Be a
not
2-day
a 1-day
person. And watch what happens. Your speech will solidify. That's why it's called solid talk. You will feel more solid. You will develop a different energy to you. and you'll
Oh
like
yeah.
the way that feels. It feels horrible. Nobody likes prolonged bouts of indecision. You
Mm.
cut your soft talk in half, and trust me, folks, it's in there. You cut your soft talk in half, and you'll feel it. And as the old saying goes, she who feels it knows it. He who feels it knows it. So the other side of that coin, our language. So that example of that little girl's aunt saying, "My, you have a big nose." We're talking about spells, Paris. The definition of by definition, the definition of a spell, Webster's definition, is a word or a combination of words of great influence.
Mm-hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and we're spelling on ourselves. We're casting spells all day long, and some of our spells are neutral in nature. Some of our spells are constrictive in nature. Some of our spells are expansive in nature. So, you have a big nose. Just da, 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 da. That is an example that collapsed that little girl's imagination, forced her to stare at this massive nose in her
Mm-hmm.
mind's eye. It like sucked the life. It just ripped the air out of her lungs, caused her 2 decades worth of problems.
Wow.
And then there's
That's
the other side of the coin.
oh
You'll like
yeah.
this.
Oh yeah.
I did a workshop, 2014. I'll make this quick. 2014. And I gave the presentation. There's a guy sitting up a booth right next to me. He heard everything. I mean, he didn't have a choice. He was right there. He comes up after me, or comes up after, and he says, "That was really cool. You want to hear a great story?" Who says no to great stories, by the way? Hey, you
Yeah.
want to hear a great story? Me? No, no, no. Great story. No, no, not a chance. And he goes, when I was 14 years old, my grandfather took me out in the backyard. I don't remember what the guy's name was. We'll call him Johnny. He said, "Little Johnny, life is full of zigs and zags, twists and turns, ups and downs. You're going to get some things right and you're going to get some things wrong. But always remember to err on the side of being a badass motherfucker." And
Yeah.
he said his whole life changed in an instant. He said he got bigger. It was like his energy expanded. He expanded. He looked up, saw himself, and his imagination is capable and confident. I mean, it's a thing. When grandpa drops a cool F-bomb on your head when
Mm.
you're young for the right reasons,
Oh
that's going to
yeah.
stick with you. And he said, I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've gotten a lot of things right, and I just go for stuff. I'm okay. I go after what I want, and I've got a great life.
Wow. I love that. I love your energy and I love that. I love that stuff because that is true. You know, when you hear things that are told to you that are so much more positive than like that story you told about the girl and her grandma with the big nose, it's like that affects you. And, you know, I can even sit here right now and tell you like plenty of stories of positive and negative things that I've been told or heard. And how did that translate over, you know, into different areas or cracks of my life? But, you know, I wanted to say, I just want to thank you, Mark, for coming on and, you know, talking about this because language, let's just be honest. It's the most powerful thing. It's the most powerful thing. So, you know what? Just thank you for coming on. Thank you for having this conversation. Thank you for sharing all the great tips that you did and the great work that you're doing. So, yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having interest in it.
Yeah.
I meet the coolest, literally the coolest people through this work. It just There's a kind of person that their ears perk up when they hear about it, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And they tend to have an adventurous soul. You know, they're curious, they're open, and it also takes some bravery, folks. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
there are parts of everyone's story that are terrifying. And I've
Mm-hmm.
seen acts of courage after acts of courage after acts of courage after acts of courage. Every coaching session, I'm doing. I don't coach much anymore. One on one, it's all it's all certifications, certifying coaches
Yeah.
and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And our certs are they're hardcore. I mean, it's people come out a lot shinier than when they go in, and it's it's a very challenging certification. And you just watch people show up and just be brave, and there's, as the old saying goes, confront the dragon, get the gold.
Yes. 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 Oh my gosh. You're just your little sayings. Like you have these sayings that you say and I listen to them and I'm getting pumped up right now just like hearing those things that you mentioned like that. And I'm so excited to drop this one on Friday when this one comes out because it's going to be a good one. So, I mean, because
Agreed.
this has been a great conversation. So, I hope that everyone listening, you guys, hope that you have a great rest of the day. If it's a daytime or nighttime, whatever time it is that you're listening to this. And Mark, once again, thank you so much for coming on. I
My pleasure,
appreciate you.
Paris. Thank you for having me on. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yes. Bye, guys.